people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
De la noche, Stephanie Piñeiro.
That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. It's fight week, folks. It's fight week for Stephanie Piñeiro like it's fight week for Marie-Pierre Hule, who are going to be squaring off against each other this Friday on the island of Puerto Rico for what is an international version of the WBA title. Bit of a step up in class for Stephanie Piñeiro, talented up-and-comer. I wouldn't call her young. She's 35 years old, like Marie-Pierre Hule is 35 years old, in a career that sort of needs to get a move on. A southpaw to Marie-Pierre Hule, who is an orthodox fighter. Scheduled for 10 rounds in the women's welterweight division, the winner of the fight comes one step closer to challenging reigning WBA welterweight champion Lauren Price. Stephanie Piñeiro sports a professional record of 8 wins with no losses and no draws, 2 knockouts, to the more experienced Marie-Pierre Hule, who sports a professional record of 11 wins with 1 loss and 2 draws, 3 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 14 professional bouts. Last in action in November of last year against Anissa Benayoub, who Marie-Pierre Hule decisioned in what was a 10-rounder. This will be her very first fight of this year. Something very similar applies to Stephanie Piñeiro, who last saw action in December of last year opposite the ring Kalindra Faria, who she decisioned over 8 rounds, and this will also be her very first fight of this year. Stylistically, Stephanie has the right style for the job. This fight pits the boxer-puncher versus the pressure fighter, Stephanie being the boxer-puncher and Marie-Pierre Hule being the pressure fighter. So in that department, Stephanie might have the edge, but because she's not as experienced as Marie, and because she doesn't have as many rounds in the bank, there is room for this to turn into a fight. Stephanie has only ever been the 10-round distance once in her entire boxing career so far, and in previous instances I've noticed what looks to be a gas tank issue. I've seen her get tired. I've seen her gas out in fights where she was clearly winning and could have finished the opponent if she wasn't running on fumes, and you can chalk that up to a lack of experience. She needs more rounds, and she means to get them this Friday when she takes on Marie-Pierre Hule. Stephanie's the kind of boxer-puncher that likes to move and punch and set you up for counters. She's very good at that, and I could see her doing that to Marie. But because Marie is so much more persistent than anyone Stephanie has fought so far, like I said, there is room for this to turn into a fight. In terms of size, they are about even. Both are on the bigger end of the spectrum as far as welterweights go. Fighters who could easily campaign at 154, maybe even as high as 160, but they're fighting at 147 for now, and they both have size. They both have power. I think their styles is what's going to separate them. I think that Stephanie will create enough separation that she will be able to win a points decision. I don't think she stops Marie-Pierre Hule. And it also helps that Stephanie is the hometown fighter. The fight is happening on the island of Puerto Rico. A little home field advantage goes a long way. And so I like Stephanie Piñeiro to win a points decision and come one step closer to challenging Lauren Price for her alphabet titles. Stephanie on points is the pick. In men's junior middleweight news, it's fight week for Sergey Bohachuk as well. After his KO loss to Brandon Adams, it taught Sergey Bohachuk a valuable lesson, and he means to show Brandon what he's learned. Since his knockout loss to him 4 years ago, Bohachuk believed he was unbeatable before Adams drilled the durable Ukrainian with a left hook that abruptly brought their 10-round fight to an end and knocked his career off track. Adams trailed on all three judges' scorecards when his flush shot snapped Bohachuk's head backward and dropped him late in the 8th of their March 2021 bout in Guaynabo, Puerto Rico. A disoriented Bohachuk beat the count, but referee Raymond Peña stopped it because he couldn't stand up straight. In the first fight with him, I don't know about the later rounds, and I thought my chin was like iron, Bohachuk told the ring. He taught me my chin isn't iron. I need more movement. I needed more defense. I fixed this now. I'm better, and I'm very happy. Very excited to be part of this big show, to show a lot of people that I'm different now. Bohachuk, 26-2 with 24 knockouts, can avenge his first professional loss against Adams, 25-4 with 16 knockouts, on September 13th as part of the Canelo vs. Crawford undercard. The Adams vs. Bohachuk rematch will be streamed on YouTube before the Netflix portion of the show starts at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. Seen a lot of grumbling and a lot of belly aching about the undercard for Canelo vs. Crawford. And near as I can tell, it's a solid undercard with some solid fights. This one among them that, if nothing else, you don't have to pay anything extra to see it. You won't have to pay anything extra. You won't even need a Netflix account to watch Bohachuk vs. Adams 2, because that bit of it is going to be on YouTube. So how could you complain? Bohachuk wanted an immediate rematch with Southern California's Adams. Time convinced Bohachuk it was more beneficial for him to face other opponents and improve his skills, especially defensively, before he faces Brandon again. Before the first fight with him, I didn't have experience before 8 rounds. For 10 rounds, Bohachuk said, I had just 17 fights and 17 knockouts. Every fight was a maximum of 6 rounds, 7. I don't know what it was like in the later rounds. Now, I fought in 12-rounders 2 times with Virgil Ortiz and Brian Mendoza. Now I know what it's like going long rounds. Now I'm different. The rugged Bohachuk dropped Ortiz twice, but he lost the majority decision and the WBC interim super welterweight title in August of last year, also in Vegas. He wants a rematch with Ortiz, 23-0 with 21 KOs as well, but all his focus is on redeeming himself against Adams first. Bohachuk, 30, is a 5-1 favorite to defeat Adams, 36, in their 10-round rematch, according to DraftKings. He led Adams by scores of 69-63, 68-64 twice before he got stopped. I was winning every round the first time, and then just one punch changed the fight. Bohachuk said, that's boxing. It's difficult. You can win every round and then take one punch, and that's it. The first time around, I didn't have experience. I didn't know this. Now I know this. Now I'm working with my trainer, Manny Robles. He taught me, you need to be ready for the first round through the 12th round. Every round you need to be ready. This is boxing. You can win every round and take one punch, and that's it. Like the fight with Adams, that's it. Like the fight between Fabio Wardley and Justice Houle. Justice Houle was well ahead of Fabio. One punch got in, and you know the rest. And so Sergey means to redeem himself, not just against Brandon Adams, but against Virgil Ortiz too. I think he's going to beat Brandon this weekend. I think he will avenge the loss. But I don't see him getting a rematch with Virgil. Given what Virgil experienced in that fight, it was the worst I had ever seen him. And I don't see Oscar or Virgil's father in any hurry to put him back in there with Sergey. Not in the near future. In many ways, Sergey for Virgil was the first legitimate junior middleweight that he fought, because even though he had 2 fights there already, those were against no-hopers and nobodies. Frederick Lawson, Thomas Dulorme. Sergey was the first legitimate junior middleweight that he fought, and I don't think it's a coincidence that Virgil didn't look good in that fight. To some people, Virgil shouldn't have won. Given the aesthetic of the fight and the 2 knockdowns, the decision should have gone to Sergey, but it didn't. So Sergey means to avenge that loss as well.
Well, good luck with that.
4 years out from his initial meeting with Brandon Adams, I believe this weekend he will get his revenge. But there is a question as to whether or not Sergey should continue to campaign as a junior middleweight when he's good enough and solid enough that guys aren't going to fight him just for the sake of fighting him.
No.
He's a high-risk, low-reward guy. And so you wonder that he shouldn't get ahead of the 154-pounders by moving up to 160 after this.
They're all going to end up at 160 anyway. Xander, Sebastian, Virgil,
If you get a head start on them, maybe you win a belt, and maybe they have to go through you to get it. Just something to consider. And what else? Sergey Bohachuk, before he accepted the Brandon Adams rematch, was offered a shot at Jaron Ennis. They rejected that fight for this one, and that is confirmed by Sergey's promoter, Tom Loeffler. A shot at revenge on a show this big was too sweet for Sergey and his team to pass up, so I understand the logic. Maybe he can fight Boots Ennis afterwards? I'm not sure. I maintain my original position that Sergey Bohachuk represents a dangerous fight for a lot of people, and perhaps his best shot at winning a title from someone isn't at 154, it might be at 160. See what happens. Now, this being fight week for Canelo and Crawford, the fight that's on everyone's mind, T. Stella of the Divine Hook said, "Can someone answer me? Who did Bivol beat to beat Canelo, since that's the logic we're taking with Crawford?" And Hathaway continued, "Crickets, because y'all are just haters. You can't answer this." And the new. It would seem that young Stella has Terence Crawford winning the fight this weekend on the premise that even though Dimitri Bivol didn't have a resume like Canelo's, he still beat him. And so, even if Terence Crawford doesn't have a resume like Canelo's, he'll still beat him. That is her logic. I get the point that she's making, though, that resumes don't always tell the story. Styles make fights. I think that's what she's saying. But Dimitri Bivol is not a good parallel for Terence Crawford, because they are nothing alike. Dimitri Bivol went into the Canelo Alvarez fight with certain advantages that Terence Crawford doesn't have, because for starters, Dimitri is a noticeably bigger man than Canelo Alvarez, younger too. Where Terence Crawford is none of those things. He's not bigger, and he's not younger. He's not a light heavyweight. I understand the point that she's trying to make, that having the better resume doesn't always mean you win the fight. I agree with that. But you have to have the right ingredients, don't you? You have to have the tools for the job. And if you're looking at Dimitri Bivol as being a parallel for Terence, well, he's not a very good one, because Terence doesn't fight like Dimitri. Notice the punches, notice the combinations, straight ones. Keeping a bit of distance between himself and the opponent, notice the feet, on his toes. Bouncing in and out of striking distance while he puts punches together in rapid succession, and keeping that bit of distance between him and the opponent. Dimitri's a guy who makes himself very difficult to get to for light heavyweights who have light heavyweight frames. Guys anywhere in between 5'11 to 6'3, 6'4, what have you. So just imagine how much more difficult that was for Canelo Alvarez, who's 5'7" if he ain't 5'8". Trying to get close enough to Dimitri to land a counter, to land a power shot while he's on his toes, moving back and forth, straight punches in and out. Between the style and his stature, none of that did Canelo any favors, but Terence Crawford, he's not a carbon copy of Dimitri Bivol. He doesn't fight like him, and he's not built like him. He's older than Dimitri, smaller than Dimitri. Terence said, "I was always told I wasn't gonna be shit. It filled me with rage, and so I had to prove a point." I believe that's what he's trying to do here. Even now, you got a lot of people, they still take shots at Terence's resume. Even his big win over Errol Spence Jr., who so many people were backing. They've been tearing that down too for the last 2 years. Sour grapes. Sore losers who don't want to give him any credit for that fight. Whereas in this one, you can't tear it down, you can't diminish it. He is at every conceivable disadvantage. He's the B-side, he's the older fighter, he's the guy moving up in weight, he's the guy who hasn't fought in over a year. He's got a lot of disadvantages going in. But I wish him all the best. Though when I see someone like the Divine Hook likening Terence to Dimitri Bivol on the premise that neither had all that great a resume before they fought Canelo, I think that's the point that she's making, that neither one of those two guys had all the names and Hall of Famers on their resume that Canelo has on his. I get it. But Dimitri is a full-blown light heavyweight, you know. That's saying that he's going to be more durable than all those guys at 154 and 160, at 168, that he likely can take Canelo Alvarez's punch, but it really doesn't help that he is a defensive fighter. So he doesn't have to. That he can take whatever does get in, but a lot really isn't going to. He's just not a good parallel for Terence in this situation. Stylistically, physically, it's a different fight with a different guy, different circumstances. For a perspective, Terence Crawford would be the smallest fighter that Canelo Alvarez has fought in years, and I mean years. We're talking about all the way back to the Miguel Cotto fight of 2015. Almost everybody since then has been taller than Canelo Alvarez, longer. Who knows? This may be a breath of fresh air for Canelo, not having to fight someone who is so much bigger than he is. You hear me say it all the time. Longer legs make for longer strides. A taller, longer fighter taking 1 or 2 steps back covers more ground than a smaller fighter that's doing the same thing. So where a 6-foot-tall William Skull can play keep away for 36 minutes against Canelo Alvarez, having longer legs helps him do that, where Terence is a lot closer in stature to Canelo. Thus, Canelo may be harder to get away from. And a lot is being made of Terence Crawford's physique ahead of this fight, how much weight he's put on, and how much muscle. But this is all new to him, you understand? No matter how much weight he's put on, or how much muscle he's got now, it's still all new to him. He's going into a fight with the #1 super middleweight in the world, heavier than he's ever gone into any fight. So who's to say that doesn't have an adverse effect on him? Being so heavy. That much more muscle eats up that much more oxygen. Who's to say that Terence Crawford doesn't tire out? He's not getting any younger. He's 37. Just some things to think about. My perspective on the fight. Having seen Terence Crawford in action so many times throughout so many fights for so many years, he doesn't do a lot in the early goings of a fight. He usually gives up the first 2 or 3 rounds before he really gets going. So I figure that Canelo might actually pick up the early rounds while Terence Crawford is feeling things out and attempting to find his groove. And as we approach the midway point, Canelo takes his foot off the gas, as he often does, at which point Terence can start winning some rounds. In the middle, say around round 5, 6, 7. Start having some success. And off of the success he's having, he becomes bolder, tries for more punches, heavier punches, at which point Canelo catches him with a hot one. Because I think Canelo's going to end this fight by way of knockout, say, round 8 or round 9. Keep saying that Canelo hasn't knocked anybody out in a while, but a lot of these guys Canelo's been fighting are a lot bigger than a Terence Crawford. Many of them younger, full-blown super middleweights and at least 1 light heavy. So if he ain't knocked anybody out in a while, that might have something to do with it. But Terence is none of those things. He's not bigger than Canelo, he's not younger than Canelo, and he's not more active. What effect do you think a year layoff has on the timing, on the reflexes? I'm a fan of both fighters, so I don't really care who wins per se, but as far as a prediction, there is just too much working against Terence Crawford here, too much working against him in this fight to where Canelo is the logical choice. And so that is who I'm going with. Canelo Alvarez by way of knockout, somewhere in the 8th or the 9th, maybe a little later, but that's how I have it.